Welcome to JHart Modelworks. The body's been set aside, it's time to move on to the engine. This one's a little long, so grab a drink. Welcome to my workbench, let's get started. As usual, we'll start out by cutting off and cleaning up the parts. And of course, throughout this video, a lot of things will get missed as I forget to stay in the frame. I even put down tape markers this time. To get between the exhaust pipes, I'm using some UMP customizable sander sheet cut into a thin strip. It really does a great job getting into these tight spaces. Next, we're going to go ahead and drill out the holes for our plug wires into the top of our valve cover. I really like to drill these holes out before paint, as I don't have to worry about messing up the paint job. The engine comes with triple Weber carbs, and as often is the case, they are molded together as one big piece. We're going to fix that, and to do that, we'll start by marking off and drilling holes in the engine block where the carbs will connect. A quick test fit to make sure the new pins will fit through the holes. Now we're going to mount the carbs and drill them from the back side of the block so we know the holes will line up. We aren't drilling them completely, we're just going to drill them enough to mark them so we know where to drill once we take them back off. With the holes drilled, we glue in and cut off some new pins using hard K&S music wire. One more test fit, then it's time to cut and sand the individual carbs. Whenever not in use, I'll keep the carbs on paint sticks with numbered labels so I don't mess up the order. It shouldn't make too much of a difference, but it never hurts to be sure. The carbs look much more realistic and a lot better separated. On the end of the carbs, the kit comes with this airbox and filter assembly. The street custom version and many reference photos instead have these air intake funnels that look really cool. We're going to make our own using some electrical ferrules. They have this curved lip that really looks the part. These are also really useful for doing exhaust tips if you've got that trumpeted exhaust. Now these are a little too long for what we need, so to make sure we cut all 6 of them to the same size, we're going to make a simple jig. We're going to drill a hole into a block of wood the same width as the ferrule and to the depth we want. Once we get the correct depth, we'll drop in a ferrule and lay the blade of a hobby knife flat on the wood and begin to slide it back and forth in a sawing motion. It's okay to let the ferrule spin in the hole as long as it doesn't move up and down. The end result should be 6 air funnels approximately the same length. We're going to set these on one of my Altoid tins with some double-sided tape and hit them with some Mr. Hobby Super Gold 2. Just looking at them from different directions to make sure they're fairly the same in height. Everything is back from the spray booth. The block is Tamiya flat aluminum and alclad steel for the transmission. The valve cover was a pain. I tried 4 times to get it right. I was trying to spray it with lacquer silver and then an acrylic gray and rub off the raised areas, but I kept rubbing off the silver as well. Instead, I sprayed the gray first, then used the flat side of a Tamiya cotton bud to paint the raised surfaces with a Vallejo silver. We have various other engine parts. I forgot which metalizer I painted the exhaust in. It doesn't really matter. I coated it heavily in alclad sepia and then a light coat of Tamiya flat clear. Not sure why, maybe my sepia is bad, but it always comes out glossy for me. But I really like the way this looks, especially for older car exhausts. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is add an oil dipstick. It should sit between the first and second exhaust pipe. We'll start by cutting some 1/16 inch metal tube at roughly a 45-ish degree angle so it will sit against the block. And then we'll cut it to length. Now we'll glue it into place and take a look. And glue in the top of a dipstick made with some music wire. It's a little out of scale, but I don't think it looks too bad. Drilling distributors is a pain in the ass. They're just so small and I always end up stabbing myself. But the aftermarket ones always seem too big. I drill the holes out carefully with a 0.4mm PC board bit. I'll strip some shielding off some 30 gauge hookup wire and glue the exposed wire into place. It seems like I always hit it right on the first test fit, but once I have glue on the wire, I have to fiddle around forever before getting it to slot in. I'm going to hit it with some CI kicker and then cut it off. Always leave it a little bit long. It's better to have too much wire than not enough.
Whoa!
Once I finish with all the plug wires, I'm going to drill in the center of them for an ignition coil wire. I leave it longer than the rest so I can tell it apart. Now it's time to start putting it all together. I'm using some Bob Smith's MaxiCure CA glue, and we'll start with the oil pan and the valve cover.
Yay!
There's a notch on the valve cover and it lines up with the notch on the block. Make sure you line those up so you don't put it on backwards. Next, we'll add in what I believe are the oil filter and the road draft tube. Now it's time to glue in our carbs, followed by our air funnels. Got a little carried away with the glue on that one. I was torn between leaving these silver and painting them gold. I really liked the way the gold turned out better. We want to make sure we get glue only on the inside and the end of the funnel. We don't want to get it in the outside or it'll look messy when we put it on. When we set them in place, we want to make sure they line up really well. Yep, this kit has the dreaded floating alternator. I'm going to fix this with this photo etch bracket. We glue the pulleys almost in place and then slide the bracket in between the top pulley and the engine block before pressing everything home, and we want to make sure that the bracket looks like it's somewhat holding the alternator in place. We'll finish off the front with the fan and move to the other side of the engine to mount the exhausts. So of course I got halfway through the plug wires before I realized the camera wasn't recording. Nothing's glued in yet, it's just dry fit for now. We'll line up this 30 gauge wire and place a mark. Then we'll take everything off to play with fire. We're going to take some of this 3/64 inch heat shrink tubing and slide it over the wire so it just overlaps our mark. Then we'll hit it with fire. I find that if I keep the tubing low down in the blue section of the flame, it doesn't smoke up and turn black as much, unless I'm just not real careful. Now we'll cut off the end and line it back up, and then make another small mark on the bottom and bend it to go into the valve cover. And here we'll go through it again for the final plug. I should have left them a little longer, but it'll work. It's not my cleanest plug job, but it's not too bad. I would probably leave the boots off the distributor next time. They look a bit out of scale on that tiny distributor. Now to add a little bit more detail, I took some 30 gauge black hookup wire and added some bare metal foil to it, and I'm going to glue that in place over the carbs to replicate a fuel line. I'm not running it all the way back to the fuel tank. I just want it to disappear under the engine, so I'll cut it off back here. Add a little bit of braided line down here for a future mod in the engine bay. And now we're going to glue the engine into the engine bay itself. Putting some glue on the mounting points on the chassis and on the engine. It's very important to make sure you get the engine seated all the way down into the supports. There's little divots in there and you want to make sure it sits all the way down. If you aren't careful, it can look like it's in place, but it's really sitting up too high and you may have some clearance issues with the hood. For a final bit of detail, we're going to add in a rudimentary attempt at throttle linkage. We'll cut another piece of hard piano wire from K&S to run the length of the carbs, then cut several pieces of 1/16 inch metal rod and glue it to the piano wire to look like mounting points. We only need 2, but I lost about 5 as they flew off into space when I cut them. We will carefully glue this into place. Now I'll cut 3 more small pieces of piano wire to run from the bar to the carbs. They were all out of frame, of course, and I ended up replacing them anyhow with 3 new ones bent at close to a 90-degree angle. I'm no Nandimo Seisaku, but it looks alright to me. And that's a wrap for the engine. Join me in the next video where we'll address the rest of the engine bay.
If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. Also, feel free to leave comments, feedback, critique, or anything else in the comments section below. I enjoy interacting with all my viewers in the comments section and try to reply to all the comments I receive. If you want to catch future videos, please consider subscribing to my channel and make sure you click the bell notification icon so you can be notified when I upload new videos. As always, thank you for watching, keep modeling, and have a great day.